Today, we are looking at the plumbing of the New Zealand media sector, and specifically, well, a leak. A massive financial flow where capital moves out of New Zealand subsidiaries and goes straight into the pockets of UK parent companies. I am taking the position that this is essentially extraction, that multinational super indies are using these structures to minimize their domestic tax footprint while still utilizing taxpayer subsidies.
Right. And I will be arguing the opposite. It is certainly a flow of capital, but calling it a leak implies it is a mistake. I take the view that this is just the necessary cost of doing business in a globalized television market.
So the central question we're tackling here is whether these intercompany payments for things like management, IP, formats are legitimate operational costs, or if they are sophisticated accounting mechanisms designed to hollow out the New Zealand tax base while still utilizing taxpayer subsidies.
Exactly. And my stance is that you get what you pay for. These payments reflect the fair market value of world-class intellectual property. You really cannot expect global standards without participating in the global economy.
Let us look at the numbers because they illustrate the mechanism perfectly. We have New Zealand entities, specifically South Pacific Pictures, heavily supported by NZ On Air taxpayer funds, yet the profits do not necessarily stay in Auckland. Look at 2013. South Pacific Pictures paid a $4.5 million dividend to its UK parent company.
Right.
But here is the kicker. Their declared net profit for that year was only $3.02 million. They paid out more to the UK than they actually earned in net profit. How? By loading the books with management fees and consulting charges. These act as deductible expenses. They lower the profit on paper, reducing the tax bill, before that money is shipped off to London.
Oh, well, that looks aggressive on a spreadsheet, sure, but you have to look at what they are actually buying. South Pacific Pictures is part of All 3 Media, a global super indie. That isn't just a branding exercise. It gives them access to the literal recipes for massive hits like The Traitors or The Chase.
But at what cost to the local economy? I don't dispute that rights cost money. I dispute the ratio. When you have a setup where a subsidiary earns $100 but pays $90 to the parent in fees, the New Zealand government can only tax the remaining $10. It systematically shrinks the tax base. The formula just becomes revenue minus massive offshore fee equals tiny taxable profit.
You are ignoring the regulatory floor there. Companies cannot just invent a $90 fee to wipe out their tax bill. The Inland Revenue Department enforces the arm's length principle.
Which works in theory.
It works in law. It means those internal transactions must be priced exactly as if they were dealing with a stranger. If a local company pays a UK parent for a service, the IRD requires that price to match what they would pay an independent third party. They can't arbitrarily shift profits. The pricing has to stand up to commercial scrutiny.
But arm's length is incredibly difficult to police when you are dealing with intangibles. I would argue these royalty payouts vastly undervalue the local contribution. You have Kiwi Cruise, local cultural nuance, domestic research and development. That is the cook in the kitchen. But the financial structure says the recipe, the UK trademark, is worth more than the cook.
The IRD isn't blind to that valuation gap. They have a specific cross-check for this, which is the 25% rule. If the royalties paid offshore exceed 25% of the company's earnings, it triggers a high-risk flag. There is an active tripwire to stop companies from attributing all the value to the overseas IP.
Even if it stays under the 25% wire, the structural tension remains. We are using New Zealand taxpayer money funds, explicitly meant to stimulate New Zealand culture, to subsidize private entities structured to prioritize offshore liquidity. When that dividend left in 2013, that was capital leaving the ecosystem, not being reinvested in local talent.
If you block that flow, you isolate the industry entirely. Regulatory scrutiny is high enough to prevent abuse, but we have to accept that paying for global expertise is the price of admission. If you want a competitive media sector in a small market, you have to pay the rent on the global IP.
To wrap this up, my stance is that the current formula systematically disadvantages the domestic economy. It allows revenue to bleed out as deductible fees, leaving the taxpayer to subsidize the operational costs of foreign-owned giants.
And I maintain that strict IRD regulations keep the playing field fair. These payments ensure New Zealand audiences actually get access to the global content they demand.
It is a legal reality, certainly, But the balance between global connectivity and retaining local value is still very much in question.
A balance the market will have to keep negotiating.
That does it for this session.